Welcome to the Union Federation here on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville. And this week on Union Federation, this is episode 143. We are discussing the Orville New Horizons, Season 3, Episode 9, Domino, in all spoiler glory. So just a reminder, spoilers ahead. My name is Kevin. I'm going to be your captain here on the USS Union Federation starship here. I need my commander, co-captain, the guy that's willing to step in and take command in case something were to happen to me, my fellow brother from another mother, co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network. Welcome, Kyle Wagner.
It's always good to be here. Though I've got to admit, I'm feeling like with this episode we're going to be talking about and the feeling of this, it's reminding me of another Star type show. I don't know. There's
Starship Troopers?
That might be it. Would you like to know more?
I would. But we can't do this alone, Kyle. We could, but it wouldn't be as fun. You know, we got to have, of course, our science officer, security officer, krill assassin. We need to have Haley Stoddard. Welcome.
Hello. I find you biologicals quite illogical.
Nice. I have been accused of being illogical.
Hey, it just brings up a question. What would negotiations between the Kalons and the Vulcans be like? That would be...
Oh, my God. I'll tell you right now. Hold on. I'll tell you right now before you answer that, Haley, because I do want your answer. It's kind of like watching Q go up against Spock.
True. Which would be really actually quite interesting. We've never had that. That would be really fun. No, I think this would be that's a very interesting concept because they're biologicals, but because of that logic, I mean, they'd really be able to reason with each other, and probably everybody else in the room would just be completely confused and not know what they're talking about.
That would be funny to see, though. I would love to see that. All right, guys, we got a lot to get in here. Of course, this is New Horizons, the Orville, Season 3, Episode 9, Domino, the second to the last episode of Season 3. I'm not ready to call it the final second to last episode yet of the Orville. We will see going forward, but we got actually one bit of news I did want to bring up with you guys that is Orville related. So for you astute Orville fans out there, you might have heard on the interwebs and now available in book form and audiobook form, there is a book called The Orville, Sympathy for the Devil, written by Seth MacFarlane, and it is a novella about 35 pages long, and it is an interesting thing to bring up right now because this was supposed to be an episode of this third season of the Orville that takes place between the last episode, Midnight Blue, and this episode, Domino, that we're getting ready to discuss. And I just want to give you a little quick thing about it here, because I think Kyle and I were talking that we might actually cover this as an episode after this season is done. I actually went out and bought the audio book of it, and I'll tell you why in a second. But the episode synopsis reads, quote, "When Captain Ed Mercer and the crew of the USS Orville come face to face with one of humanity's most vile ideologists, they must solve the moral conundrum of who to hold accountable for evil deeds real and imagined." Doesn't give a lot there in the synopsis, but Sympathy for the Devil was originally written by Seth MacFarlane as the 9th episode of Season 3, who later called it in, quote, outlier, and is a conceptually experimental story. The script was jettisoned when the COVID-19 pandemic made filming abroad too difficult to manage. The lost script was picked up by the publisher Hyperion Avenue as a tie-in novella and published on July 19th, 2022. As of this recording, of course, it is July 30th, so it's just recently. An audiobook version, which is the one I purchased for, I think it was $7.99 on iTunes, was released at the same time, and it's read by actor Bruce Boxleitner, a.k.a. Alcuzan, from the current season here. or I guess Union President Alcazan, or as some of us else know, Tron. It is 35 pages in length. So I just want to bring this up because for you diehard Orville fans, you kind of want to know what else is out there story-wise. This was supposed to be an episode, Kyle. I just started listening to it. I'm just going to give a little tease. It takes place right before World War I, and then it goes into World War II in Germany. That's all I'm going to say. That's the beginning of it. Your thoughts on this episode that wasn't an episode?
Well, this story actually snuck out about a month ago, but it just kind of went by the wayside. But that there was an Orville novel coming out when I first read about it, and it's an episode they didn't film this season, but they didn't really go into a lot of detail. There wasn't anything about an audiobook or anything like that. But I think I'm glad that they're finding a way to get this out, because I think, one, we're limited on the amount of Orville we get anyway, and two, it keeps it more in. It's more ways to get it, and I think the more Orville that gets out, the better at this point, as we're still in the unknown area right now of what the future of the Orville is. There's been some big things happen in the last week or so that I know we'll touch on in a little bit, but yeah, and more Orville is always good in this case.
So what is interesting too is if you look at Seth's Twitter, he's commented on it, and I think in an interview as well. This is considered canon. If he says it, I'm going to take it for his word and take it as canon. Haley, does this interest you at all, or are you just more interested in the what we get as a television series?
I am generally not one to sit and go back and read books about TV series, even though some people love to say, well, they fit in the story and they're in the timeline. Sci-fi books are not my thing.
Gotcha.
I mean, it sounds interesting from a concept if we're saying that was supposed to fit in the current time of the Orville, but it's back between two massive things in our history. Its concept is interesting just because I do find World War I and II history quite interesting.
As do I.
But sci-fi is really not my book genre.
Gotcha. Well, for those of you that maybe don't want to read the book or don't want to listen to the book but want an idea, you can go to the Orville wiki site, Fandom, and they go down and pretty much give you a really good detailed synopsis of it. I avoided reading past a certain point because I want to listen to the audiobook, because I like hearing Bruce Boxleitner read in my ear. I'm just that guy. Kyle.
Actually, I just want to bring up, because you've talked about McFarlane mentioning things in canon, and there's a comic book that's out as well, and McFarlane's gone on record saying that comic book is canon also. So if you're looking for other things in Orville canon,
I think is there a new comic out? Because I got the one that came out like a couple of years ago. It was like a 3 or 4 part thing with him and Malloy's character. Is there another one that came out? Because I didn't.
Yeah, I think there was a one shot. There was a one shot or something that came out after that as well.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool. All right, guys. Well, that is the news. Did want to bring that out because that novella does take place between Midnight Blue and this one, Domino, that we are getting ready to discuss. All right. Domino episode aired July 28th, 2022. We have our captain's log here, our episode synopsis. Haley, would you do the honors again?
Of course. After their expulsion from the Planetary Union, the Moclans form an alliance with the Krill. Charlie and Isaac invent a device capable of destroying the Kaylon fleet, and the Union votes to use it as leverage for an armistice with the Kaylon, which is successful. However, Union Admiral Perry, feeling that the Kaylon will eventually devise a countermeasure against the weapon, betrays the Union and brings it to a Krill ship, in the view that the Krill will not hesitate to wipe out the Kaylon. Krill Chancellor Talea blasts the shuttle on its way back to Earth in order to prevent him from breaking the news of the Krill-Moclan alliance to the Union prematurely. The Orville crew discovers this later on, and Bortus informs them that the weapon is likely being brought to a brilliant Moclan scientist, Dr. Kalba. Ed reckons the Krill-Moclan alliance will be a strong threat to the Union and hesitantly forms a temporary alliance with the Kaylon? A large-scale battle between the two nearly formed alliances breaks out, ending with Charlie sacrificing herself to destroy the weapon, impressing Kaylon. And Talea gets taken back to Earth to stand trial for war crimes after being captured. Afterward, the Kaylon are offered membership to join the Union, which they accept. The crew of the Orville holds a memorial for Charlie in honor of her sacrifice.
All right, guys, rest in peace, Charlie. We'll be discussing that more, and also, of course, our Admiral Perry. But I want to get your guys' first impressions. We're getting towards the end here. It's hard to say, like, when I was watching the episode, I automatically pause it to see how long it is, and this one's about an hour and 15 minutes, I think it is, hour and 17, something like that. And I'm like, okay, they're gonna put a lot into this, and that's what I love about it. And they've been able to successfully do that without feeling like they're wasting my time. So I was on the edge of my seat, wondering where was going to go what, and it's hard to say what they're going to do with all these threads they've been sewing together this whole season. Haley, your first impressions of this episode?
I was surprised at definitely some of the stuff that takes place in this episode. Did not expect certain things to go the way that they did. However, I thought that they did a really fantastic job with it, because all season long, we've had the Kaylon threat looming, and we hadn't really seen much of anything, like little things here and there. And so this finally came to fruition in this episode. And I know we're avoiding talking about this being the final season of this. However, I will have to say, if it is, this was a wonderful way to kind of wrap it up, so to speak. I know we have one episode left, but I think this really, if this is it, we don't need to get any more. And even if we do, the Kaylon threat, I thought that they told the story really well and wrapped that part up in a fantastic way.
Interesting to see how that's going to carry over in this last episode. But that's a good point, Haley. Kyle, what were your thoughts?
I want to kind of echoing on what Haley said. This really felt like a great penultimate episode for not only this season, but series as well, if that's the way we go, because I think they did a really good job of addressing some key storyline points, and I feel like there's still a couple of major storyline points that they can wrap up in the final episode. But everything about this episode, this is probably the most action-packed episode of the Orville ever. I made reference to it earlier, reminding me of another thing, which I know we'll talk about a little bit later. But Seth was definitely pulling from more of his other sci-fi influences in this episode. But what I liked about it was we finally saw some things that we've been waiting for all season. We've finally gotten to see the fighters in action.
The Pterodons,
the Pterodons.
Haley was like, "Yes, the Pterodons are in action."
Yeah,
instead of just parking there in the docking bay, almost narrowly hitting every other like alien shuttle that would come in and land.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kyle. Go ahead.
No, we got, and with the Domino name, obviously it reflects on a lot of different things about how dominoes fall. The Union building this new weapon, but also the dominoes falling from the last episode where the Moclans go make an alliance with the Krill. So it's just, they're doing such a good job of keeping things tight, when just a few episodes ago was like, how are they going to address all of this? We didn't see any way they were going to address all this before a finale, especially if it is a series finale. So they're doing an absolutely amazing job with this. And like I said, to me, it was the most action-packed episode of the Orville we've ever had.
When you said most action-packed, I was looking at going, okay, there was the big fight, at the second part of Identity Part 2, but it felt like there was a lot of tension that was building in this one that felt like this was a lot more action-packed. Well, I got a fun check and an awesome check I want to discuss, guys. I'm gonna try this little transition here. I gotta thank Kyle for that one. That was fun. All right, guys, let's have some fun. What's that?
I said we give you buttons.
Buttons are fun. Buttons are fun. All right, guys, and we're in the fun section right now. Okay, so I was trying to figure out where the heck this cabin was, the cabin scene. The only thing that IMDb was giving was the Fox Studios where they do all the interior shots and stuff like that. But I don't know where this cabin was, but it reminds me of stuff I've seen before, maybe in other films. So if someone knows where that is, I looked even on Reddit. I was looking everywhere. I could not find where this freaking cabin was, and I want to go visit it. It looks really, really cool. But probably the most fun moment, guys, was Gordon Malloy and Charlie singing the duet "Flowers Never Bend with the Rainfall" by Simon and Garfunkel. I thought this was a really cute scene. It did feel like when I was watching it, I was going, crap, something bad's going to happen to someone later. I just had a feeling while I was watching this, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this scene, Haley, where we get to see Gordon singing again. And by the way, as I said in the last episode, remember when he said he might get court-martialed? And then the admirals go to the captain going, you got to do something with Malloy here. He's really got to keep his mouth shut, even though we liked what he's saying. And then he goes, and then I joke saying, well, you might as well just do some singing for us. He did.
It's very true. Very true. No, it was a nice touch. I honestly, when this scene started, I thought they were in the simulator again. And I was like, oh, this is a cool simulator scene, although it should be raining outside or snowing or something. And then I was like, oh no, they're at an actual cabin. So no, it was super nice to have that singing again. So yeah. You never know where it's gonna take it.
Yeah. And with Kyle, it was nice. Charlie seemed a little more relaxed and singing along.
Yeah, for a second I thought, did they go back at Dolly's cabin?
I know, right?
But no, it's always fun. It's always fun, and I don't think we've actually had enough of that. One of the things that I don't think we've had enough of this season is just those little downtime moments.
Yeah,
with the Orville crew, and so it was nice to get, because, like I said, it feels like it's been very few and far between this season for that.
Yeah. Okay, guys, remember how I joked about this several episodes ago? Kelly introduces her father's very old rum. Here's to you, Dad. Let's get hammered. Laugh, laugh, laugh. I joked about this earlier. I think Kelly's an alcoholic. I'm just going to say. She's teetering that. Haley, you're seriously contemplating that, because how many times, remember the drink that Mercer gives her, but it's spiked?
Yeah, I mean, we can joke about it because in a way it is funny, but at the same time, given my line of work, it's kind of a serious issue. I mean, she doesn't let it necessarily completely affect your work, but still, I don't know. To me, that really wasn't funny. I was like, okay, drinking again, getting trashed again. I don't know.
I just had to bring that up.
Yeah.
Okay, Kyle. I don't know about you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You want to comment on that?
I just wanted to weigh in. I liked how the very old bottle of rum was basically a bottle of Captain Morgan's with the label taken off.
Maybe Captain Morgan's not around anymore.
Yeah, I know, right? Okay, guys. I have to let Clyde and Bortus slide a little bit here, because those old school walnut breakers are a pain in the butt. And I thought maybe 25th century walnut breakers, not counting as Zalayan, would be updated a little bit, because those original ones, they still suck.
But think about it. They're at her dad's cabin, so it makes sense that maybe, there's people who have that nostalgia for, older things.
Yeah.
That they wouldn't have new ones. I thought it was great. I thought it was hilarious, because, I mean, it's true. Who can use those things?
We are no embarrassed.
But here's the problem. They're Mocklins. They just would have ate the shell anyway.
True. I know, right? It was funny how Bortus mentions getting the meat on the inside of it. This is true. But I guess they were trying to blend in, I guess. So, okay. So I got an awesome check here. Some really cool stuff in this episode. I got a little help with the winteriscoming.net article that came out. And a lot of the stuff that I thought was cool, I thought they put in a good synopsis here. The strike team's dive out of the shuttle during the battle was really cool. And it was a very tense scene for me to watch. And it kind of reminded me of like the Star Trek episode, Star Trek 2009, Kyle. I think you
I was getting those vibes too. Yeah, very much those vibes.
Yeah. This scene I really liked. Kelly and Talea's fist fight was an awesome moment because it was very brutal, but it was also funny, and how they kept trading blows and insults. Especially Taylor talking about the being the marriage not working between Kelly and Ed, and also too a shout out to the special effects department for gradually worsening Kelly and Talea's wounds as the fight went on. What'd you think of that scene, Haley?
No, I thought that was great. I thought it was funny because Talea's trying to get at her, and she's just like, not gonna work this time. Not gonna work. Nice try. And then it was later, and it wasn't so much like the words that she was using, but just kept fighting, and she's like, now you're really pissing me off.
Yes.
It's like, fair enough, like, so yeah.
Kyle?
It's always a good thing, and I like the fact that they actually had Talia bring up the marriage.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, they're going there. They're going low on this one.
So I want to get your guys' opinion on this because the author brought this up, and I'm like, yeah, he's right. Says, since we're talking about Kelly, he goes on to say, she's pretty much become an Ellen Ripley level badass this season. I didn't expect that. Palicki pulls it off really, really well. She's had some really good acting moments, but she's been kicking some butt, Haley.
Yeah, I think it's definitely been nice to see, and I think that's part of, again, last time we recorded, I talked about how Mercer has kind of grown into more of a, mature captain. I think that kind of goes with the rest of the crew, and saying that each of them has kind of progressed, like they still have their moments, but, and so it's understandable that she would kind of become more of a badass.
Yeah, Kyle.
See, I'm not getting an Ellen Ripley vibe from her. I'm getting more of a Sarah Connor vibe from her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just as strong.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying,
just not as unhinged.
Yeah, just not quite as unhinged. But yeah, I'm definitely getting a little bit more of a Sarah Connor. Is just gonna come up and punch you if she needs to, and is gonna hit you with some smarky remarks, and do whatever she needs to do.
I just want to mention too, not in the notes here, I love the scene when Isaac and Claire's family and Topa were looking up the Borealis star system. I thought that was really cool, especially when he uses the little laser to connect the Big Dipper, and it was just a neat little scene, kind of seeing a family scene there, and Big Topa being part of it. I thought that was really, really sweet. I just had to shout that out there. These two notes here, we're going to obviously save the big Charlie discussion later, but I did want to bring these up. The writer goes on to say the episode did a tremendous job with small, silent moments like Charlie watching as Isaac disarms a Mocklin who's about to kill her, only then to spare the Mocklin and allow them to escape with their lives. Seth MacFarlane's quiet moments of grief during the funeral were another standout. There was a lot of character development in this episode, and I think it's important to note as fans as we watch anything that we're interested in watching when it comes to character development, a lot of character development goes unspoken, and I think that's really important to keep in mind. One last thing, the parallel between this season's opening episode having a funeral for Isaac and one of its closing episodes having one for Charlie is so powerful, both in terms of their respective journeys as characters and for what it represents for the crew. The seats at Isaac's funeral were practically empty, which was a great representation of how fractured the crew was after his betrayal in season 2. Conversely, Charlie's funeral was packed with the crew once more feeling like a unit after their adventures during New Horizons. She may have been only in the show for one season, but Charlie Burke left a huge impact. And of course, we will discuss that later in the away missions. But I do have a couple of opening topics discussion that I want to touch on, guys. Ted Danson, Admiral Perry. We've joked that we've really enjoyed the admirals in Orville. We haven't up until now. We've used the term Badmiral. If you're a Star Trek fan, you know what that is. Specifically, a lot of the admirals that become bad in Star Trek have ulterior motives. Haley's shaking her head. She knows. But we finally get a Badmiral. Rest in peace, Admiral Perry. Now, I want to discuss, was he really a Badmiral? Starting with the this week's Den of Geek article by Michael Wynn Johnson, who we love and does a great job contributing, says, quote, still feeling the uneasiness of the looming Krill-Moclan alliance, the Union, in a bit of dramatic irony, perhaps feels a little more secure for the first time in years. That is until the device is stolen from Union headquarters and shuttled away into the depths of space. It is revealed that Admiral Perry and a small group of Union defectors are given the weapon to Talea and the Moclans to do what the Union could not and eliminate the Kaylon permanently. And while I was watching the episode, guys, I did come across, of course, that discussion between Admiral Perry to Talea, where he goes, quote, this is not treason. Quite the opposite. I believe in the idealism of the Union, but my compatriots have made a grave mistake. Sooner or later, the Kaylon will figure out a defense against this weapon, and we will lose our tactical advantage. The Union won't do what it needs to be done. I know you will. And a little bit later in that discussion, when Talea questions what he's going to do, he's going to surrender himself, he says, to the Union, thus leading her to kill him in his shuttle before he can tip off the information in the Alliance. So, guys, I want your thoughts on Admiral Perry. We've really enjoyed seeing Ted Danson, show up in this series along with the others. Was he a Badmiral, Haley?
I mean, if we look at Star Trek and we look at all the Badmirals in Star Trek, it's not so much that they don't believe in Starfleet, but it's that they are bringing their own personal ideas and saying my ideas and my beliefs and my values outweigh the values and the beliefs of the collective, so to speak. And so in that sense, yes, because he's basically saying the ideals and the beliefs of the Union are wrong and mine are correct. And so I alone had to do what needed to be done. So in that regard, yes, he would be a Badmiral because he did something to damage and cause problems that he thought something later on was going to solve. So, yeah, definitely.
He is a Badmiral, according to Haley. Yep. Okay, Kyle, I want you to answer that same question, but I did want to bring one thing up. There is that discussion later between Halsey and Ed and Kelly about how he mentions Perry has always kind of had these more radical ideas and thinkings. So it kind of ties into this a little bit. I don't know if that changes your opinion or not, but I need you to answer the question. Is he a Badmiral?
In every technical sense, yes. And his actions are that of a Badmiral because he went against what the Union had voted for. He put his own personal beliefs first. He went to the enemies of the Union and he gave them this incredible weapon. And then he got stupid. Let's be honest. You don't tell them, oh, I'm going to go turn myself in after this because they're likely going to take you out. And that's what happened.
Smart move, but he should have stayed with them.
Yeah, that's what I thought we were going, is he was either going to stay with them or he would just kind of leave, not tell them what he was doing. Like they say, I'm just going to make myself disappear, and maybe turn up again in another episode. So I was a little shocked that they killed him because we've never had this is probably the biggest major character death count in the Orville since it's come out, and between this and what happens with Charlie. But the other aspect though is in the part you bring up, Kevin, and actually I'm kind of on the opposite side of that. I don't like that they put that in because we've never seen that with this character. And then all of a sudden, after he's dead, we find out he's this radical thinker. To me, that's kind of like, okay, we need to find a way to really justify this more, because it feels a little out of place. I think if we would have seen him question some other things through some of the earlier episodes, it would have been a little more believable. I think there was a couple other admirals that we've seen that might have made more sense with, as far as them questioning things, because we've seen them kind of stand up and come with different ideas. We hadn't really seen that from Admiral Perry. He had been kind of the one that was always in Ed's corner.
Yeah.
Things like that. He was much more like Admiral Halsey than he was like the other admirals. See, like Lucy Liu's admiral, I could have seen that, because she's kind of seems always.
No, not Lucy Liu.
I'm not Lucy. Why can't I think of her name? You know who I'm talking? Why am I blanking? I'm blanking on her name. I am a bad podcasting host. Kelly Hugh, yes. She's been a little bit more militaristic in how we've seen her and stuff like that. So I think she would have come off a little bit more believable, looking for the militaristic advantage.
Plus, we've seen her helming an Orville or Union Federation ship, the big one.
Yeah. But I mean, he definitely, just off the pure definition of it, he's a bad admiral, but he was going with his own beliefs, and which weren't necessarily the wrong intentions, but it was going against what had been decided by the rest of the Union. And if you're supposed to reflect those Union ideals, and you're going to go surrender yourself based off those Union ideals, what are you doing? Come on now.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kyle. He is a bad admiral, but what I really like about the writing in this series is that he has a moment that explains his actions, to Talea, and you see why he did it, So he's not a clear-cut bad guy in this. And yes, it would have been nice to have gotten some tease to what was happening, but maybe they didn't, because they wanted it to be a surprise. That all comes in the writing, but it would have been nice to at least get a little tease about that. And unfortunately, this doesn't mean I'm going to get my final battle with all the admirals helming a starship, but maybe I'll get Halsey. Who knows? We've seen Ozawa do it. I just one of the things I want to see. But rest in peace, Admiral Perry. Ted Danson, thank you so much for what you've done for the Orville. He was just so good as an admiral. I loved him. But when I go back and rewatch it, though, I just think that during the times that we do see him, I'm still going to think of him as as an idealistic, Union representative, that the decision that he made was at the moment, and it wasn't something that was just like building up and planning. So at least that's in my head canon. I don't know how you guys would, but all right, guys, I want to throw one other open topic out here. I want to talk about a couple of reviews, and Star Trek fans, like hardcore Star Trek fans, and I have a lot of them on Facebook and social media, praising the Orville. I have a couple of 10 out of 10 IMDb interviews here regarding this particular episode. One came out July 28th. The Orville continues to out-Trek Trek, and now it out-Star Wars. This episode was amazing, and it takes sci-fi to a new level. These longer episodes bridge the gap between episodes and movies. There are no, quote, filler episodes in this season as well. Do things move quickly? Yes, but for the better. There's no need to waste time going through the motions. We don't need to see these chess pieces being set up. This episode in particular has a lot more plot in it than half a season of TNG, and I love TNG, the reviewer says. I really hope there's a fourth season. The next review, 10 out of 10. Better Star Trek than Star Trek. Better Star Wars than Star Wars. Better Mass Effect than Mass Effect. This is an ultra high quality sci-fi movie that could have run in cinemas. 80 minutes full of plot development, character development, thrill, action, and amazing effects. Roughly 20 minutes in this episode, the writers already turned the universe as we knew it from the previous seasons upside down. And boy, was the finale part of this episode satisfying. The only sad thing is that Seth MacFarlane is clearly building a possible series finale next week and wrapping up most plot and subplots while only foreshadowing instead of starting new ones. He seems to be unsure about the possible renewal for season 4. despite today's installment making the Orville the best sci-fi show in recent years. Now, Kyle, I wanted to bring up this discussion point here because of something you brought my attention to, especially that was highlighted during Comic-Con. And there was a petition to replace Alex Kurtzman with Seth MacFarlane, executive producer of All Things Trek. And the article itself came out on July 22nd, 2022 by Eric Pisola. And, when you brought it up, we obviously said, no, this isn't going to happen. It's a fun thing to discuss. But a couple of things from this article say there's no doubt that many fans of the original series do not like the new era of show or films. And they're regarding to the new Trek. And I guess there's a hashtag NUTREK out there regarding new Trek.
That's been out for a while.
Yeah. Like the new electric VW bus, they say new Trek has strayed too far from its roots and it's Star Trek in name only. Many fans have turned to the Fox Hulu show The Orville for their space adventure fix. Orville creator Seth MacFarlane is also a big Star Trek fan and obviously modeled his show on the franchise. Many feel he's done a better job at capturing the spirit of the original series and even Next Generation as well. It's often that when so-called new Trek shows are promoted, fans go out of their way to recommend the Orville instead. These fans usually blame Star Trek executive producer Alex Kurtzman for ruining the franchise. I would say that this probably is an exception from Star Trek Strange New Worlds. That was something that was a little more that original Star Trek fans preferred over what's happening with Picard and, of course, Discovery. I'm only assuming, too, they're referring to the live-action Trek. That's just an assumption on my part. But I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Star Trek fans' reaction to the Orville. And please remember, when season 1 of the Orville came out, it had a lot of mixed reactions. Star Trek fans were like, nope, this is too jokey. This is too Seth MacFarlane. And they either heard those remarks and stayed away from it, or they watched a couple episodes and they were out. But now this season 3, it is getting people to talk again. Haley, what are your thoughts?
Okay. So granted, I cater my social media to avoid people who are super negative and bashing on things just because other people like them. Please stop doing that. Anyway, and so most of the people that I see, they aren't hating on any of the new Star Treks. They might dislike certain things, but they don't hate it. They don't want Alex Kurtzman out. They just might not, they watch it because they want to watch it, but they don't necessarily love it. And much like we've talked about on this podcast several times where, especially you and I, Kevin, we're not huge fans of Discovery, but we love some of the other stuff. And so this notion that there's Star Trek fans out there who aren't watching the new stuff, it's accurate. There definitely are. But those are also the ones that are super negative, reach in and to comment on people loving something and being like, you shouldn't love it because I don't. And so it kind of opens up this discussion, opens a can of worms of just that negativity, which, we have this thing here, enjoy your fandom and don't bash other people for liking what they like seriously. And so I've had experience personally of people being rude to me, and I find that a lot of the people who are saying new Trek and being insulting typically are older fans who grew up with TOS, whether in original run or shortly after in reruns, and they're just the ones who are grumpy and they don't like anything else, period, whatsoever, and they're gonna bash on everything just because. And so again, I try to avoid people like that because I've had people attack me for stuff and I don't appreciate it. And so this notion that fans are just exiting it en masse or whatever from Star Trek because it's not Star Trek. Yes, it is. Stop it. And don't be a jerk.
Okay. You're absolutely right. There is that side of it.
Yeah.
However, there are fans of Star Trek that don't
Mm-hmm.
go out of their way to be negative, but have shown their frustration with quote
Yeah.
new Trek. And I'm that part of that group. I don't go out of my way to bash it. I actually try to watch all Trek. Like, I'm not a fan of Discovery, but I do watch the episodes because I do want to see, I want to be informed. I don't want to be the uninformed fan. But there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, and I think we're all within that group. Haley, you and I are not huge fans of Discovery, but we find moments that we like in it, but I think what it is, it's the frustration of how the new approach of quote new Trek has taken this non-episodic thing, and the lack of character development, and we've gone through it over and over. That how do we express our frustrations without being grouped into the ones that are just like, it's not my Trek, F you, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there's more of us, to be honest with you, of that group than there is of the super negative ones, the ones that you have to weed out on social
Yeah.
media, and that I do as well. So I come at it from that group, and I understand this petition, and I understand that even though it's not going to happen, it is a way of sending a message. And I don't think that everyone that's in that camp is necessarily the ones you're weeding out on social media.
Yeah.
Kyle, your thoughts?
I think this is a very key point because you both bring up excellent points, and I think this is why there's a reason why I think more people are enjoying what Seth's doing with the Orville, is that what's happening is I really feel like, and a good comparison I have is to what's happened with Doctor Who the last couple of years, and a lot of complaints that Doctor Who fans have had. The writing on Star Trek right now is in some of the shows and in some of the episodes is very heavy-handed with the topics it's dealing with, and it's almost like you're feeling like it's getting forced upon you. And yes, we've had other criticisms, especially with Discovery and things like that. We don't need to go into that. I'm just talking about the writing in this aspect. I think a lot of people feel like Trek's, the agendas, or whatever you want to call it, the stories, the agendas, whatever you want to call it with Trek, people feel like these newer Trek shows are really trying to force that into your face and put it boldly right in there. Where what Seth has done, especially with this season with the Orville, is he's addressed these heavy topics, but he's done it in a way where it doesn't feel like you're getting it forced upon you. It flows naturally with the story. It's there. It's there, but it's not disrespectful to the viewer who feels like, oh, I'm tuning in and all I'm getting is agenda. And I think that's where a lot of people are having issues with how Star Trek is being written by Alex Kurtzman and his team right now, is that they do feel a little bit of a forced agenda, just from what I've seen on the internet. Now, not everybody feels that way, but I think Seth this season has been so good about writing about very heavy topics, but not making it forced upon the viewer. I think that's where the difference is, and I think that's why Seth is being so widely accepted of how good this season of the Orville is, because even though it's heavy topics and pertinent topics we might not all agree about, they're being written and coming across in a way that it's not disrespectful or forceful upon the viewers.
Haley, did you have a comment about that?
Yeah. So to get to your point, and I agree with what you were saying, Kevin, I I honestly I don't think necessarily like this is so much an Alex Kurtzman thing, because he's involved with episodes, but there's writers. And so if you're frustrated with the writing and the direction of how things are going, that's a writer issue. It's a, some,
But
and
wait,
so
hold
it's
on a
not
second. Hold on.
so much.
Hold on 1 second.
Sure.
Yes, you can do that with the writers, but the executive producers, aka Alex Kurtzman, they
Yeah.
usually lay out a plan or have to approve a plan, and the writers have to usually stick within these guidelines. So yes, you can complain about the writers and the way they do it, but these are also approved by the people above them. And if you are someone that Alex Kurtzman was paid a lot of money to spend 5 years, and I think he got approved, his contract got extended. You're
Mm-hmm.
answering to these people that have to look over the scripts and have to hire these people. So there is a share of blame there.
Okay. But I mean, how much of it is, just general frustrations with, because I mean, I feel like this is indicative of a lot of television shows.
Mm.
The directions that they have to go, the shortened seasons and things like that. Like, they don't have necessarily the time to flush things out like old television did. And I know we've talked about that before. And so I get can be frustrated with scenes, but again, I want to say, okay, well, if you're frustrated, just don't watch it,
Right.
and then don't complain.
Kyle.
I think too, you're getting into a generational thing here, Haley, and we've all talked about the difference in television, but the difference is you have the same franchise that you can compare was done a certain way back in an old format to how it's doing now, where with something like the Orville, you really don't, or even like Marvel things and things like that. You have a generation that was brought up on a certain way Star Trek was done, and now they're not enjoying what's being done now. And again, Kevin, we've had this conversation many a times on Culture Clash and a lot of other things. It's finding that balance to being with the new times, but still being respectful from where you came from. And I think that's one of the, especially with these long running franchises like Star Trek and Star Wars and a few of these others that are still going, they're really having a hard time finding that balance.
Yeah, and some shows do it better than others. And I think that the response that Star Trek Strange New Worlds got in the direction that they took, that they were able to do episodic stuff, but yet still highlight the rest of the crew and keep these threads going throughout the whole season without it being a burden on their shoulders. Like, oh, we got to mention this during every episode, or we got to keep this going. So I'm hoping that the direction of future live action Star Trek, or New Trek, as people are calling it to, learn a lesson through Strange New Worlds, because that was done excellently well. And that's coming from someone who's a huge Next Generation fan. It was so looking to Picard, and Picard to me struck out more than it did, hit a hit. So anyway, I know we can go on. That's a strong subject, but I did want to get your opinions that because it's very timely. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and let's get into the article discussion here. Okay, guys, we're going to go ahead and pass through the character comments here because there was a lot of returning characters, nothing really big new, but I did want to jump into the article segment, of course, done by Michael Wynn Johnson of Den of Geek. And there's a couple of talking points here I want to bring up, guys. He goes on to say, when the Orville New Horizons was introduced 8 weeks ago, it appeared to be everything you'd want to see that was on the horizon. It was shiny, bold, big, exciting, and most importantly, introduced new ingredients that promised to take the show in directions it had yet to explore. Yet it would be all for naught if the scripts didn't bring the same revitalized energy or take any chances in terms of story. If New Horizons lacked vision, then this could easily have been an overinflated Last Horizon for the show, proving once again that the writing team had no cohesiveness. Proving once again that the writing team had a cohesiveness that makes this third season easily the strongest. Domino opens ominously on the rainy planet of Krill, where Chancellor Talea and a Moclan delegation meet to discuss an alliance against the Planetary Union. It is a brief teaser of a scene, but it's an immediate payoff in terms of several story threads that have been woven throughout the season and raises the tensions of the episode just as quickly. Knowing this alliance was inevitable, the Union and the audience are thrust into a sense of danger and unease, and that dramatic tension lasts almost the entire episode. The writers, Brandon Braga and Andre Bormanis, give audiences everything they need these first 5 minutes, including a fearlessness of calling out the ideals of the Union and their hypocrisy, an important challenge to the very core belief system of the show, which would pay off later. So the first thing I want to discuss, guys, we got a power play right in the beginning here. Did this alliance between the Krill and the Moclan surprise you? What other observations did you take from this? Kyle, start with you this time.
It didn't surprise me at all. It actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it, because you've still got this huge Kaelon threat out there. The Moclans realize that we can't take this on by ourselves. They're out of the Union. Who are you going to turn to? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. You turn to the Krill. And it still made it a very interesting, because look again, this is one of the, you want to talk about writing. Look how they address this massive let's bring together an alliance within a 5-minute conversation, and with everything with the Krill and how she is telling him, no, it's going to be a shared commander because you don't have the female cunning, going basically what she knew what the Mocklins were about. And yet she got them to pause enough to realize, okay, we got to take this back to our government. And they did this all within 5 minutes. It was so well done, and it made so much sense. And again, this is why I think one of the reasons like Trek fans want Seth to write, because he's writing in a way to where he's getting to the point quick. He's moving on. He's keeping it flowing. It's not getting bogged down in the mud. And that's a great example of this one segment right here where they create this alliance.
The seeds are being laid throughout the season, Haley. I'll be honest. I didn't see this coming. Some people say, oh, I saw that coming a mile away. Okay, whatever. Good. I didn't. I was surprised. I loved it. What did you think?
Semi-surprised, but it does actually make sense because, the Mocklins, they might have, as they state, yes, we have all these powerful weapons, but we don't necessarily have the ships. And so, they're left to defend themselves, and the Krill are kind of defending themselves. So it does make sense that you'd have these two people who aren't part of the Union come together and form their own, because this Kaylon threat is looming. And so I was semi-surprised, but it definitely makes sense. To your point, Kyle, about, this is why, maybe fans of Star Trek are saying like Seth should write, is because he is getting to that point. I can agree, but I think the only show that currently takes forever to get to the point is Discovery.
So this caught me by surprise, but like you guys were saying, when I looked back on the rest of the episode, I'm like, okay, I see why they were heading this direction. And I just got to mention the scene where the Mocklin delegate comes in and is discussing this with Talea, and she's saying, who's going to lead this? And we're Mocklins, right? And I love the fact that she quotes Malloy saying, "You've got balls." That was really funny because, oh no, it would be an insult to the Mocklins, but the Mocklins were like, okay, we're going to let her do her thing here. But I when I was in her position going, I'm really surprised she didn't kill one of those guys. that was a lot of patience, but that was really, really well done. All right, guys. One other thing I wanted to bring up for this article discussion here is they go on to Michael goes on to say, when we first see the Orville and her crew, they are part of a large defensive of Union ships in position around Zalea to fight an oncoming Kaylon force. When the Kaylon arrives, the Orville is the linchpin of this defensive effort that they have developed a new weapon, simply called the Device, for most of the episode, which triggers an overload in the Kaylon network's relays, powered by the quantum drive. The Device overloads the Kaylon ships and obliterates their vessels. While a new threat comes into the Mocklin Krill alliance, the Union can breathe a little easier knowing that they have another threat under the control. And then it goes on to say, after the Admiralty convenes, it is decided the Orville and the Admiral Halsey should attempt to meet with the Kaylon to discuss a ceasefire, since the race of artificial beings will have no choice but to agree to their terms. When the Orville arrives on Kaylon 1, they must use the weapon twice in a massive display of destructive power before the Kaylon agree to meet and eventually agree to the terms of the treaty. So, guys, the discussion I have here is we have a weapon MacGuffin here. Mercer calls out the Union also for attempting genocide in their plans. Now, obviously, there had to be something to bring the balance of power when it comes to the Union. And if you guys think about it, this was starting to kind of lay the seeds with Charlie, her fourth dimensional thinking, her awesomeness at, working with, reluctantly, a Kaylon. And then it comes to them being the ones being able to use it and put in the fail-safe device. If anyone tries to demolish it or take it apart, it goes off. So, two-part question here, guys. The weapon MacGuffin. What did you think of that and its power play? And also, Mercer calls out the Union for their attempted genocide. Haley.
Yeah, so when we see this, I was like, what is going on? What are they doing? They're all gonna die. And then, I mean, visually, that was like so cool to see this. And then I was instantly intrigued of what's going on. And Charlie's working with Isaac. Okay. I mean, I know we've kind of moved on and they're kind of okay with each other. Basically, they're frenemies at this point. And so that was kind of an interesting thing to see. I do have to, before I move on to the whole genocide topic and discuss this a little bit more, I do have to say the one thing, I'm going to throw some science at you, that was really cool was after they used this device, the debris from the ships, how it was kind of moving, but then it kind of stopped. Sort of, but also sort of not, because space has nothing to stop it. So once something is moving, it's going to continue to move unless it encounters something that has a large enough gravity to make it off its trajectory.
So you're thinking all the pieces should have just kept moving in an outward direction then, or whatever. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the ones that were at least close enough to the planet would have fallen because the planet's gravity would have pulled them in. But they would keep moving because an object is not going to stop moving because there is no counter force in space unless you encounter a comet or an asteroid or a planet or a moon, something that has enough gravity to alter the course and direction. Those pieces would have kept moving, not very fast, granted, but they would have kept going. Nothing would have slowed them down. So yeah.
I don't know if you're surprised by this, but I didn't pick up on that.
No. I'm not.
well said though. Hey, that's why I like having you here. Call out the science card anytime.
So yeah, so that was kind of neat to see to a degree. I was immediately intrigued by this weapon, how they came up with it, because I mean, they developed it. Who knows, like, again, was this something that was worked off screen, off script, so we never actually saw it since the last episode? I'm so confused. But it makes sense that they would try to do something knowing that they can't turn all these Kalons emotional now. That's not going to work. And I thought maybe that's a direction that they would take it, is that they would take and make some device that would just like turn off that part of the brain and activate their emotions again. I thought maybe that's where they were going to go, but this was really, really incredible. And to speak to, this genocide that Mercer says, it's a really interesting topic because what do we, is a genocide? I mean, you are threatening to wipe out an entire species that, while they're all robotic, they are sentient. But at the same time, you are facing your own. And that is quite a conundrum of what do you do when you can't reason and you can't communicate with something that is more powerful than you are, that is threatening to wipe you out.
Right.
And so that was quite an interesting thing. And I don't know. I mean, what would any of us do if something came and said, we're going to take you out because we're more powerful than you are and we're smarter than you are and you don't deserve to live? I mean, we would fight. Our instincts would kick in. Those, base instincts from when we were, Neanderthals would kick in, and we would do anything we could, not only to save ourselves, but our children and everything else. And so it really is quite an interesting idea.
Before you answer, Kyle, what you were just saying, Haley, reminds me of what Admiral Azawa said, saying, is it genocide when obviously they're here to eradicate us and we're just trying to prevent them from basically doing the same? And Kyle, this bomb just kind of reminds me, if you watch enough TV or action films, it feels like an EMP type of device, basically. So, Kyle, your thoughts on the MacGuffin weapon here and this whole genocide thing that was brought up?
Well, first of all, I want to talk about how cool a visual that phalanx of Union ships together, even though it's a horrible strategy defensive-wise, because you're just making yourself one big sitting duck. But it was really cool looking with the way
that's referred to in the trivia, and I'll bring that up later.
The weapon itself, it makes sense because it would make sense that Union would try to develop something like this, especially losing their relationship with the Mocklins. I honestly, I get your feeling. It did feel like a little bit of it. I thought it was an EMP type weapon at first too, and then what happens with it. I honestly thought it was going to take a little bit of a different twist when maybe they realized they couldn't destroy it. They might, because they talked about it going on like the neural nexus of the Kalons. I'm like, maybe they figure out a way to put out that programming to activate their emotions and blast it through using this weapon to put out through their neural nexus. But it didn't quite go that way. But the weapon makes sense, and its addition made sense within the episode itself. And I think how they handled it and how they used it was the right way to go, because you can't. I'll tell you what I was getting reminders of when they were having the conversation about using the weapon was Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah,
I was really getting a lot of that kind of thought process, and the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and how to handle it. And they basically, in a way, kind of did that. They used it as a deterrent when they realized, oh my God, they can wipe us out. Then they came to the table to negotiate peace. And that gets to the genocide aspect of it. And it is a fascinating question when you're talking about a race that wants to wipe out all biologics. That they at that point they couldn't see reason. Now, as the episode went, we see that Kalon Prime evolves a little bit and sees some things, and so we see that. So they were right into not committing genocide, but again, that comes back to it's the moral dilemma. Do you sink yourself to your enemy's level to defeat your enemy, or do you maintain your own morals with the thought process of what it will cost you to maintain those morals compared to? So it's a matter of the price you pay for the decision you make.
Thus, the moral conundrum between the admirals and how it was going to be used or not be used. So, yeah, well said, guys. Michael Wynn Johnson, now we're going to refer to his article again in the away missions, but he does end his article by saying, much like the title of the episode would indicate, the story in the show's overall arc got to this moment because of a series of falling dominoes audiences have witnessed over the last 8 episodes. This aforementioned continuity makes the show infinitely more engrossing, and prior to this season, the Orville failed to do so on a continuous basis, utilizing episodic adventures that would easily be missed week to week. He gave this a rating 5 out of 5. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. Oh, Kyle, yes?
I just want to bring in the point because I think he brings up the perfect point, and I think it ties into that, kind of wraps up the conversation we were having earlier about Trek. I think it's one of the most interesting dynamics is they're still trying to figure out how to do it weekly episodic but carry over certain plot points, or do they just continue this season-long storyline? I think that's where Seth is nailing it. He's being episodic, but he's making sure to carry over certain plot points so they're not forgotten. And I know that was kind of always a knock we had on like TNG and stuff like that. It would be years before they get back to a certain plot point.
And he's been having a small core of writers. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but Brandon Braga, and I want to give credit to the guy, I keep forgetting his name, Andre Bormanis, and I think John Kazar gets in there as well. But I noticed that the writers group is a lot smaller too. And I think that because Seth MacFarlane is also the executive producer and the creator, he has a vision, and he is signing off on, I think, what these guys that are doing with their creative writing process. And he seems to have a really nice core group of writers right now for this season. And Brandon Braga, Star Trek alumni, right, Haley?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, if people are like, oh, Orville feels more like Trek. Well, you have a director, producer who grew up on and is a fan of Star Trek, and he's got one of the writers from Star Trek. So, of course, it's going to feel like more like Star Trek because Braga wrote for Star Trek for a long time. Like,
yes. And I want it to be known too, Braga has written some great Star Trek, and there's been some that's been kind of not so good, but his record overall is very, very good. And also too, I just saw it pop up again on social media. Someone had and I knew this from years ago because I worked for a company that produced the Star Trek card game. But I love seeing the picture of Seth MacFarlane as his guest star as a crewman in Star Trek Enterprise. He was in an episode of Star Trek Enterprise. So, all right, guys, we're going to take a break here. And coming up next, of course, we're going to have trivia, and we're going to have our away missions. Horizons. We'll be right back, let you know what other great shows are here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. Here are the other great shows on the Fandom Podcast Network. Culture Clash, where we discuss the latest in entertainment and pop culture. Blooded Kings, our show covering the entire Highlander universe. Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate our favorite movies. And Time Warp, our fandom flashback show discussing a year in movies and our favorite retro movie, TV, and pop culture topics. Good Evening, discussing all things Alfred Hitchcock. Hair Metal Podcast, we cover the rock metal music of the 80s and early 90s. Type 40, a Doctor Who podcast, discussing the time-traveling Doctor Who universe. Lethal Mullet, an action film podcast covering the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Also, check out the Lethal Mullet Network for more great podcasts. What a Piece of Junk, our Star Wars podcast. Making Treks, a Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier. The Fandom Show, our Fandom Podcast Network live YouTube show discussing the hottest topics in fandom. The True Believers MCU podcast, discussing the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe. Union Federation, our Star Trek and the Orville Show. And we're proud to welcome the BQN Network to the Fandom Podcast Network. Please visit our friends on the BQN Network, a Star Trek Universe podcast that also includes your favorite topics, movies, history, superheroes, and more. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is also on all major podcast platforms. The Fandom Podcast Network audio master feed is on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. Welcome back to Union Federation, episode 143, discussing the Orville Season 3, Episode 9, Domino. And we're going to continue with some Easter eggs and some trivia here. So, Haley, I wanted to ask you on this. Much time was spent establishing the capabilities of the Pterodons this season, the Orville little mini fighters, since its premiere. And we finally get to see some combat here. Were you disappointed? Were you happy? What did you think?
No, I was very much like, oh, yay, we finally get to see him. But wait, there's more than one? Where were they storing the other two? So, yeah. No, it was super nice to see it. Although, honestly, like, I was a little disappointed in how they were moving them. They just seemed to kind of be flying like the larger ships, and I thought they were supposed to be more maneuverable and all that kind of stuff. So that was a little disappointing.
Kyle, we got to see them we got to see them in action here, and we got a little Star Warsy feel. We'll go into that a little bit later, but we got the check-in, Red 5 checking in, acknowledged. As other guys were acknowledging him, going, he's dead.
Yeah, exactly. Two things here. The design of these things, while cool, does not scream mobility, like real good mobility to me, just because of aerodynamics and things like that. The other thing is, I'm so happy for Seth because he finally got a trench run, and I know we'll talk about it a little later. But I
speak up when you said that because I couldn't hear you.
I said I'm so happy for Seth because he finally got to do his own trench run.
Yes. You know how there's just certain things in sci-fi you just don't question, and I think this falls under this. The inhabitants of Kaelon had all been upgraded to match Isaac's Season 3 redesign, furthermore muddying the waters as to how much the show's visual alterations constitute a retcon and how much are explained as intentional in-universe changes. I kind of like to think the Kaelons are like Apple updates. You can't really control it and where it comes from. It just happens. So when there's an update in the Kaelon look, it just happens to every Kaelon everywhere, and you just cannot sever that connection no matter what you do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're also the Orville's version of the Borg. I mean, they talk about it again in this episode, the collective. They say that, and it's like,
Yeah.
And so, and unlike the Borg, which are made up a bunch of, integrated different species and races, these guys are all the same. So it would make sense that, they would visually kind of all look the same. Well, and they're also making themselves.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the newer versions have made the next newer versions, and so on and so on. And so, like they said in the one episode, how many of the actual original version 1 are left?
I like how you're throwing the science in there when I was just going to go with it. I love it. Okay, Kyle, you mentioned this earlier. The opening scene has the Kalon surrounding the Union ships. All the Union ships are in one clump facing forward. This looks to be the 20th century version of circling the wagons.
Yeah, again, it's a horrible defensive position for outer space, but it looked really cool.
Yeah, it did. Mm-hmm. Frequently, when depicting aerial combat, a character refers to an approaching enemy as a bogey and not bandits. Bogey is the term for an unknown contact, and the threat is unconfirmed. Bandit is known as a hostile contact and confirmed threat. Using bogey for everything simplifies things for the audience. So there you go. Now, this bit of trivia actually did come to my mind because it reflects probably my favorite Star Trek film. In Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, in which an established member of the Admiralty joins a conspiracy to sabotage peace talks with a hated enemy. In Star Trek 6, it was Admiral Cartwright conspiring with the cable of Klingons. Here it is Admiral Perry aiding the Krill-Moclan alliance. Now, I don't remind me, Haley, you're a little more up on TOS, but there was a Badmiral in there, wasn't there? Or am I wrong? Am I remembering wrong? I felt like there was someone.
In like the overall series, the 3 series seasons.
Yes.
Actually, we don't actually necessarily see an admiral.
So Cartwright could have been the original Badmiral.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. All right.
I mean, I'd have to think back on the other films, but we don't even really see. I mean, we see admirals, but none of them are necessarily in the films. Like in my favorite Star Trek movie.
Which one is what?
I like 5.
You like 5? I like that one too, actually. Yes. Yeah.
And so, in the original film, like in the films, we get admirals, but in the series itself, there's not really necessarily any admirals. We have in the Menagerie, part 1 and 2. I don't know if they're referred to as an admiral, and it's been a little while since I've watched it. That might be the only time we actually get anybody, but that's because they come on and they're interrogating Spock essentially over what happened with Pike. And
Brock Peters, who played Cartwright, of course, returns in Deep Space Nine and plays the father of Captain Deep Space Nine. Help me out. I'm drawing a blank.
Benjamin Sisko.
Thank you. Yes, yeah. the chef, and of course, and of course for Star Wars fans, he did the voice of Darth Vader in the audio dramas, the NPR audio dramas. In case you guys didn't know that. Okay, so guys, couple things I got from the wiki trivia here. This episode takes place over a year following the Battle of Earth and Identity Part 2. Isaac observes that he served with Ensign Burke for 257 days, 17 minutes, and 49 seconds. Charlie joined the Orville at some point before Electric Sheep. And including all credits, not including commercials, if you're watching the commercials, this episode runs approximately an hour and 18 minutes. This places it as the second longest episode of both the season and the series itself, behind Midnight Blue, which was at an hour and 27 minutes. Very curious to see how the season finale, how long that's going to be. Very curious there. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and let's hit some away missions here. For the first away missions, guys, I wanted to make sure that we pretty much kept to one topic here. Rest in peace, Charlie. Ann Winters plays Ensign Charlie Burke, guys, and this is where I continue the article here from Michael Wynne Johnson. It goes on to say, quote, Domino wraps up several threads and to varying degrees of success. In one of the more daring story conclusions, Burke sacrifices herself to destroy the weapon as once again her gift is the only tool the Orville crew can use against the Moclan offensive algorithm. While it should be applauded that the Orville killed off a character they only just introduced this season, sadly, the impact of her death could have been more rousing. Despite Winters getting a few scenes of once again make her opinion known about the Kaylon, those scenes lacked anything but a reminder of a character flaw that didn't need a reintroduction. Even the unspoken looks between she and Isaac when Isaac saves her life, it didn't seem to resonate. And so it seems Winters and the character needed more time to allow the emotion to marinate, perhaps an impossible task in an already packed episode. Yet don't forget, it's all about the long game. When Burke was first introduced, she made an immediate impact and took the storyline and character dynamics in a new direction. Her death will serve that same purpose, knowing how some fans have voiced their disdain for Burke. There should be many of those viewers who now realize what the long game of Burke was all about and how her redemption and sacrifice paid off beautifully. You may hate the character, but that was the point. You may hate the conflict she created, but that was the point. Viewers must realize that tension, even when it comes to characters you don't agree with, drives the story forward, and that, simply put, is excellent writing. I had seen some blowback on her character by some fans saying, oh, she's not developed, she's lame, blah, 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 whatever you want to put. The negativity was out there for this character. I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on Ensign Charlie Burke story arc in season 3 overall. And did your opinion change on the character since she was first introduced? Haley.
Yeah, so I can kind of agree where she still was very much one note, but I understand why. Yes, she was frenemies, I'm gonna call it, with Isaac, and they kind of came to a point where they had a semi-mutual respect for each other. She still was angry and hadn't really processed that. And so that's understandable. And grief takes, some people, that process takes a long time. And so I can get it. Why she was still not necessarily one note, but still just kind of there. She was stuck. And I think they wrote her intentionally that way, to be stuck. Overall, I don't say that I necessarily liked her character, but I also didn't dislike her character. And I say that because, she had this, as this article points out, this gift of being able to, see 4-dimensionally, which is wonderful. And they used it, quite frequently. But other than that, like, there really wasn't much out there besides her, I don't like the Kalons. In this episode, she says we should just kill them all off, and whatnot. And so everything about her was just stemming from that anger. And so it relatable to some degree, but also not. And so I think at the end of this episode, where we get, her sacrifice and saying, I'm the only one who can do this, there's no other way to do this, to a degree, it semi-redeemed herself from everything. But I think the biggest point for me was that the primary was like, what is she doing? And trying to logically think of what she's doing, as he's the last one and he's standing there kind of watching her do what she does to save them. And why would she do that when we're wanting to obliterate her? So I think for the story, what happened at the end of this episode with her, sacrificing herself, was really quite powerful, in that it leads to this crazy thing that I didn't see coming whatsoever, of the Kalon wanting to join the Union. And so I know that's like a completely different discussion topic, but that's where this went. And so that's kind of where I sit with it.
Kyle, the last line here that Michael says that viewers must realize that tension, even if it comes from characters you don't agree with, drives the story forward, and that simply said is excellent writing. And that was laid for several characters. As much as we hated Clyden, that was done on purpose, and you're supposed to not like that character. And the character made a turn. We saw Charlie show her disdain for the Kalon, obviously, and of course for Isaac. But I felt that she came to an understanding with Isaac through the season, and as a couple of key moments when it came to the other Kalon they met, that was, I guess, sort of reprogrammed. But still, she had her misgivings of the whole Kalon race, and in this episode alone, she was up for, still using the weapon against them all if need be. But the one thing, Kyle, that I did find interesting with her character is that she, even though she asked permission to speak freely at times, she didn't do a Badmiral move. She always stayed. She took orders, when she was called out on things, like, in the beginning of this episode when Lamar says, kind of called her out on something that she said, or when she was about to question the order by last episode with Mercer, she did the order. So she didn't go out of line, but she was still very outspoken about what she meant. She was true to the way that she was feeling. And when she was just about to die, she said something to the woman that she loved.
So for me, this character, there's a whole up and down with this character, and aspects of there's some really well done writing with this character, but this character is also a very frustrating character. And the reason for that is, first of all, I got to say this. The seat next to Malloy is obviously the hot potato seat on the Orville. You don't necessarily want to end up in that seat. It doesn't always go great for you. Sometimes it does. You get promoted, but sometimes not so much. But with this character, especially seeing how she played out this season, it's very obvious to me this character was created for this season. I think this was a character that was destined to be, even if the show continues, they were writing this character for this season, for the aspect of dealing with the Kalon situation and the fallout of that, to be kind of a focus point for that. And they did a very good job with that story thread with her. But the absolute frustration part of this is they laid the foundation for some other interesting aspects of her character that never got developed because they wrote this character for this kind of one-note story. And again, they wrote that arc very well, wrote that character very well with her realizations. And the great thing I liked that they did with her is, even though she made compromises in how she felt and tried to adjust how she felt, she always still had that baseline of, I'm never going to like a Kalon, like fully like a Kalon, or my initial judgment of Kalons is always going to be that initial judgment. Yes, I might try to work on it, but that's where I'm still at right now. But she saw the picture of the greater good at the end. And that's the thing. She might not have agreed with it, but if she saw the bigger picture with the greater good, whether it was helping Isaac, bringing him back to life, kind of finding a middle ground with Isaac, destroying the weapon, even though it could have wiped out, she could have easily just turned around and let it wipe out the Kalon. She understood the greater good of it. And that shows how strong that character is. And that's where my frustration is, because I feel like we got a little bit of a waste of a character. There was so much more they could have done with this character. But with the way they wrote her and the way they wrote her death, I think it would have felt, to have her survive somehow, would have felt cheap and very Disney-esque, if I might say. Too much of a happy ending kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, they avoided all the consequences. So, a very powerful emotional ending to this character. I'm going to be very interested when I go back and rewatch the season, where I can kind of watch it a little bit closer together to see her arc, play out again, and we can put a little bit more focus on that, since you kind of know the direction it's going. See if you pick up on any other little tidbits in a rewatch. But it's still one of those things. It's like, you feel like, gosh, it just felt like they were starting to really hit the tip of this character and really be able to expand this character out more from the Kalon thing, and then we lose this character, and that's the frustrating part of it for me.
I understand what you're saying. I don't know if I agree with what you said, calling her character arc a one-note character arc, because I think that she was written well enough through each episode to show the steps that this character would make. And I know people like her, you know, that feel strongly about something or someone or an organization and a race that have made progress in the positive direction. I know some that haven't. I'm not friends with them anymore. But the fact that she got these moments and these little things with Isaac, and how in this episode she still had her reservations about the Kalons and not trusting them. And she says that. And I love the fact that she gets out those moments saying, I trust Isaac, I don't trust you, So her relationship with Isaac did mature. It did come to an agreement, or not an agreement, but she was able to realize what Isaac was able to do and not do, and put himself out there for her as well. So I consider that more than one note personally, but also staying true to the character, and not in one episode her completely turning around going, okay, maybe Kalons can change and blah, blah, blah. No, it was her co-worker, her crewmate that she was able to come to peace with, but that she is part of a group of other people in the Union that don't feel as good about this alliance or the possibility of it. And I thought that was done well with her character. And I think they did a really good job of saying, look, we're going to give this the long game, but Ann Winters, you're going to die at the end, but we're going to give you some moments. Go ahead, Kyle.
I guess I want to clear up the one note thing here, Kevin, because when I say one note, it's not so much the character was a one note character, because the character did have development, but she was locked into this one storyline. And I think she was created specifically for this one storyline. And my frustration is she showed enough within that storyline. I would have loved to have seen this become a character who we see grow within the show, because there was so much interesting with her growth within that one storyline of the Kalon and how she was dealing with everything like that. I would have loved to have known. I think there's so much more they could have done with her once they got past this storyline. And that's kind of what I mean when I say one note. She's tied into that one storyline that would just seem like it was for this. This character was written, created for this season arc, and that was it. But this character had so much more potential.
That's a good point. But that's important part, Kyle, is showing that the character has more potential makes her death a bigger impact. And I thought that the feeling that I was feeling watching her memorial for the first time and breaking up a little bit made her potential of what we didn't see be shown in a really wonderful memorial, because how many times personally we're affected by people that we've either lost or, people die that don't get to live out their potential, So I see where you're coming from, and I think that was done on purpose to make us feel the way that we felt. Haley, do you have anything you want to add to the late Ensign Charlie Burke here?
Nope, I don't.
All right, guys. Let's go ahead and let's get into our away mission number 2. All right, guys. So I have 2 topics I want to touch in away mission number 2. First one is Future Unknown, and then the the Orville fan love is real. Regarding Future Unknown, and this is the last part of Michael's article I want to mention here. Actually, no, there's still a second one here, but this one he goes on to say, Future Unknown. The only question is, with all of the excellent writing this season has produced, what's left for the season finale next week? He says season finale as well. Talea has been arrested. That perhaps means the Krill are no longer the same threat they once were. The Kalon, after their years of tension, are uneasy allies, and the most prominent character relationship between Burke and Isaac has wrapped. Perhaps it's no coincidence that the 10th and final episode is entitled Future Unknown. Now, there was 2 big questions here that I was going into this one. One of them serious, one of them funny. Serious one was, okay, so this weapon device is destroyed, but I assume there's the possibility of making more. Even though Charlie's not around, Isaac could build more. So I'm curious where that falls into the power play and keeping the alliance with the Kaylon, unless Kaylon 1 was so impressed with how well and what they learned from the Union and what they're willing to do and not do, because they could have killed them and they didn't. Kind of curious where that's going to wrap up. But the biggest question I have, guys, is where the hell are Bortus and Clyden going to pee if they can't go to Mocklus? So with that said, I kid on that last one, but not really. Future unknown. What are your thoughts going into the next episode and how Domino set the stage? Haley.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I mean it left things like insane. Like, again, I did not expect this like tentative, temporary, could become permanent union with the Kaylon and them joining the union. That was a surprise for me. So I would imagine that maybe they don't necessarily have to make another weapon. It's the mere fact that they could, right? So I'm going to throw in this because I wanted to throw this in earlier and I totally spaced. So Halsey brings up Napoleon, or as they say, Napoleon.
Yeah.
In this episode, and mentions, that Napoleon, did not necessarily kill his enemy, but would frighten them into submission, by saying, we have the potential to do this. So I wonder if the potential for them to make another and possibly multiple weapons, the same thing, the same device again, the mere threat of that would keep the Kaylon from potentially doing harm and deciding, nope, we're still going to wipe all biologicals out. So just that mere threat of that might be enough. Also, again, as we say, as we've said, the Kaylon are a collective. What one thinks, basically the rest think. And so if Kaylon primary and secondary and third, I'm guess, because we never actually hear his title, but there's always the three of them. If the three of them are the top, the head of this collective, perhaps if their thought process changes and they realize that, yes, biologicals are emotional but also logical, and we can potentially have logical discussions with them, maybe not all of them, but with enough of them, and realize and grow and learn, that learning and that knowledge will pass down and potentially change their thoughts, which would be quite fascinating, and change their programming, because it's ones and zeros. It's easy to change that programming, right? They just have to make that choice to do so. So I think that, this potential leading into the next episode, I have no idea, honestly, where they could take it, because I really don't know. It could be so many things, right? This next episode and potentially a next season could be so many different things that I got nothing. But I'm really excited to see where it goes, because I got nothing.
I know, that's the excitement, is like what they've been able to do and keep us on our toes. And
because
it has
of
not
this
been
big threat
disappointing.
it's not there anymore. So like, if that threat's not there anymore, I can imagine maybe Ed is going to Krill and he rescues his daughter and he says, hey, I'm your dad, and potentially that could be a thing. Beyond that, I got nothing.
Kyle, thoughts on what you think will happen next episode?
Well, just real quick to Haley's point, it's the old Cold War assurance of mutual destruction if somebody pulls the trigger. That's basically where I think we're at with the Kaylon right now. So there's that. As far as the final episode of this season, maybe of this series, I think Seth has done a beautiful job of painting the picture and setting it up to where, if this is the season finale, I think we're going to get a lot of resolutions, and we will be not happy but satisfied with where the Orville is going to leave off if this is the final season. But I think he's set up to where he can get all these resolutions and start something fresh with a new season or new projects of the Orville in the future. There's the one big dangling carrot that's still out there: Krill, the Krill Mocklin alliance, and Mercer's child. And I think that is what the final episode is going to deal with. I think Ed is going to be reunited with his daughter. I think there's going to be a rescue mission to get his daughter, or some kind of prisoner exchange, or something along those lines. And you might not get full resolution from Talea or her pulling a Kalon, but they've kind of hinted at her motherly instincts are a lot stronger than what she makes them out to be. And I think that's going to play up in the next episode. And there's a couple ways it could go. It could go in a very happy way. It could go in a very Star Trek way where you have some resolution, but there's still unresolved things and you're just kind of left to your own imagination about it. Or you could have a dark ending. There is a possibility of at least a sadness to this part, to part of this story too. But the episode still ends on a sense of hope because that's what the Orville is. But it is definitely going to be focusing on this resolution of this Krill Mocklin situation and Ed and Talea's situation. I think that's where Seth has been going. I think that's what his target is to make the finale the resolution mainly of the Ed and Talea relationship, and then the ramifications that has throughout every other story thread it affects, because it affects a lot of story threads in the Orville.
It does. And Haley, you got a look on your face. I need you to explain yourself.
Yeah. Well, Kyle brings up, the Krill Mocklin alliance, but I don't know necessarily after this episode if that even is in existence, because that alliance was with Talea. And so if she's now arrested, the Krill are going to put somebody else in her position, and that other person might not want that alliance with the Mocklins. And if the Kalon threat is not a threat, at least to the Union, I could see them both being like, hey, we forgive, we're sorry. But I don't know necessarily if that alliance is there now, given what happened in this episode.
I think the dominoes falling from this episode will be addressed in the season finale.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I am positive on, and I will put money down on, is that when Seth decided to go into this season, he didn't know if there was going to be another season or whatever storytelling opportunities for the Orville, whether it was another season or a movie or what. I think he went into this season, and it's showing that he did, knowing that, look, I am not going to leave this on a cliffhanger. I am going to make this episodic, but I'm going to tie everything in and carry it forward. And I'm going to have a natural conclusion so that Orville fans, if this is the last that they're going to get, me being the creator, and this is a passion project for me, I would be satisfied with. I think we're going to come to a natural conclusion, whether or not it gets picked up or not, because as creative as he is and his team is, if it does get picked up, I have all the faith that they will be able to create whatever challenges to challenge the Orville and the crew in the next season. Now, Talea, I said from the very start, I loved that character. I loved the twist that we had in season 2. And then when we were thinking about what we were going to see and what we wanted from season 3, I got my wish. Took a turn I didn't expect, but that's a good thing. There's still a little part of me that she plays really mean and tough, and she's let that guide her. The moments that you saw her undercover as the, what was it, the lieutenant? I'm forgetting her human version, okay? I don't remember her name. But there were some moments there that Ed calls out on her in season 2 when he has to, they have to escape together on that planet and, all that kind of stuff. The fact that they have a daughter now together, and there's just certain moments in this season where you see Talea watching her daughter, and then after she plays tough inside the cell and saying, "You're never going to see your daughter," blah, 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 and he walks away, there's a little moment on her face. I'm going like, she's thinking twice about this. So, Kyle, I think you're right that there needs to be something, because let me tell you right now, I have loved this relationship. It hasn't gone the way I wanted it, but that's okay. I love the way it has gone. And this is what makes it more fascinating, because this character is angry, is power driven. Can the character break and become a mother? This is what I'm curious about, because I'm hoping at the end of this season finale that I'm not drinking water out of this cup. I'm drinking my tears because I want to see the daughter finally reunite with Ed and maybe Talea, but at least Ed on the Orville and have a moment. Maybe he presents those letters that he's been writing to her. Because if that's the case, I'm going to lose it. Just going to say, in a good way. But I think that the power struggle of what's going to happen is interesting. But I'm going to throw this out there, and I mentioned it before. I want to see something on Moclan's change. I feel that there are people that don't like their closed-minded attitude towards women and everything in general. And I would like to see something change there and affect the power struggle on Moclus. I don't know if Bortus and Clyden will have anything to do with that, or Havina or what have you, but something needs to happen there, because it's hard for me to think that they would leave a society like that without some challenge to it in the underground. We've had seeds of it because of Havina and the Moclan women colony, but there has to be an underground thing that Havina has been in touch with that makes a point, stands up, and things start to change. I think I need to see that too. I would like to, but I don't know if I'm going to get it. Kyle, your thoughts?
There's a couple of things here, because I've been thinking about this as we talked, and I was thinking about while I was watching the episode about what the future of the Orville could be. And one of the things that I could see happening at the end of this episode is, we know in real life Seth has this huge contract with NBC and Comcast, and he's working on a new TED show, and he owes them a lot of projects. But Seth has been a lot more vocal in the last few weeks about he wants to do more Orville. It's up to Disney. And I hope I'm not stepping on toes here, because I think that it ties into the point I'm about to bring up. Major announcement out of San Diego Comic-Con was that all the seasons of the Orville are headed to Disney Plus.
August 11th, I think, was the date.
August 10th or 11th or something like that. I think that's a very, very big move and important thing. I don't know necessarily that we will get another season of the Orville, but I think we are going to get at least maybe some movie projects that maybe are Disney Plus exclusive. Disney's been showing they're willing to do something like that. Here's kind of what I'm feeling as far as this finale. At least what direction I could see it going. I don't think this episode is going to end well for Talea. I don't know if she's even going to survive this episode. I could see somebody within her political structure turn on her, or her getting assassinated because she comes to an agreement with the union involving her daughter and things like that. And so you have that. If Seth is going to be so busy with this with his NBC contract and things like that, but he still wants to do the Orville, we have an open admiral's chair on the council right now. Could we have Admiral Mercer? He's done a lot. And
so you're saying he's in line for a promotion, all of the stuff that he's done with that little ship is, right?
Yeah. And
hold on, Haley, I'm going to ask you to reply to Kyle saying, because the look on your face is priceless. Sorry to interrupt, Kyle. Continue.
Yeah. Not only because then we see Admiral Mercer, but then we get Captain Grayson taking over the ship, taking over as the captain of the Orville. And as far as your Moclus point, Kevin, if they leave that unresolved, I could easily see an Orville movie that wraps up, that deals with the Moclus situation. So just spitballing, just throwing those ideas out there, throwing the darts on the board.
Haley,
a few random thoughts in my mind.
Please,
I know, my face
find
gives
the
it
look
away.
that was just on your face. I want to know. Come on.
I don't necessarily think that Ed would want to be an admiral. I could see, if they're like, we're going to promote somebody from our cast, I think it would be Grayson.
Yeah.
I think Grayson would be an admiral. I think she shows that she has this capacity to have those decisions. She would be an advocate for Ed and the crew in that chair. But I don't think it's like Picard. Picard didn't want to take an admiral chair. He didn't want it. He wanted to be out there. He wanted to be on a ship. He wanted to be exploring. And he didn't even want to be, the head of Starfleet Academy. He didn't even want that because, like, no, and as, Kirk is told, don't let him take your chair.
Yeah.
Kirk didn't even,
Yep.
So I don't think that Ed would want to be an admiral unless he could be on a ship, but I don't think he'd want it. I don't think his character, yes, we've seen a lot of growth from his character and he's got a lot more depth and maturity, but I don't think he'd want it because to him that would be a step down, much like we see with some of our captains in Star Trek. And so I could see Kelly in that capacity. I could see Kelly taking that step and taking that seat. As much as she loves being out there, I could see her taking that role and, taking on some advocacy and things like that and being a decision maker. I see that more with her.
Kyle, you had a thought too?
Well, the other thought is that two things. We've seen that admirals can pilot ship, can be in charge of ships in the Union. We've seen that already with a couple of our admirals control ship. The other option would be is, do we think that Ed is capable? Let's say he does reunite with his daughter. Ed chooses to be a father, not repeating the mistakes he made of being so committed to the Union that lost him his marriage, and chooses to step away from the Union to be a father.
I could see that more.
Guys, okay, so here's something interesting. This transitions into the second part of the away mission number 2 here. The Orville fan love is real. And I'm going to tell you how you can change things to give more hope to more Orville. Here's what I'm going to tell you. A couple things. First of all, I put a little post on the Orville Hulu Facebook page, and I saw this hashtag going around. It's been going around for a while, and I checked other posts as well. I checked Twitter. The hashtag Renew the Orville is flying around everywhere right now. This Orville Hulu Facebook page has just under 45,000 people in it. And I put a post up there saying, basically, a picture of the Orville New Horizons, hashtag Renew the Orville. And I said, Orville fans, let's make this happen. Share the hashtag Renew the Orville. And I did hashtags like, the Orville New Horizons, Hulu, Disney Plus, Hulu series, and Seth MacFarlane. I tagged all those. I had over 6,000 people interact with that post, and I had 360 shares from it, and I had 437 comments from it. That's the update on it right now. So I'm doing my part. I know there's other people that have done more. And I was doing a bunch of other searching on it. That wave is just blowing up right now. That's one thing you can do. You could write in letters too, like old school Star Trek days. Might have an impact. But I bring this up, not just to pat myself on the shoulder, but I will. Kyle, do you remember when we were surprised by my good friend Ian, that his friend that he had dinner with around the time the Thor movie came out this summer? Do you know who he had dinner with? Do you remember?
I believe he was the vice president of Marvel Studios.
Louis Esposito.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's good friends with him. And I'm very thankful to Ian for doing this. He did a little video with him and Louis. And Louis said, basically, Kevin, I need you to see Thor 4 times in the theater, and I need you to watch Miss Marvel several times at home. Why do you think he said that? And I bring this up because the Orville is going to Disney Plus. Hear me out here. Overseas, Disney Plus carries the Orville, okay? That's how they watch it. But it's important for the American audience for it to get on Disney Plus. So I challenge you to do this. When it does drop for you American listeners out there and it hits Disney Plus and you have Disney Plus, watch the Orville, rewatch it. The reason why Louis dropped that nugget about watching Miss Marvel more than once, because they pay attention how many times you stream an episode. And that goes into decision making for many, many reasons. Okay, how many times was that episode done? Also, how many times was it streamed more than once in households? Is it rewatchable? These are the little decisions and algorithms that make it important to whether or not the show either needs to get another season, the character that it's revolved around needs to be done again, or a fan favorite series that we love dearly is on the edge of getting canceled or not. Letter writing in the old days worked. That's not going to happen nowadays. You need to do hashtags. You need to rewatch your streaming stuff. That's how this stuff is done. Kyle.
Well, since you're bringing up streaming, and I am Mr. Digital around here, to add on to what you're saying about Disney Plus, there's another reason why this is so important, is because Disney Plus is changing. Disney Plus is evolving, and it started the weekend of San Diego Comic-Con. Disney Plus, for the first time, put R-rated films on their platform.
I watched Deadpool on Disney Plus just the other day,
and you still don't feel right about it.
Yes,
but here's what I'm saying is, yes, Disney owns Hulu, they own ESPN Plus, they have that bundle. I truly do believe within the next 2 years, Hulu will become something that is completely absorbed into Disney Plus. Hulu will not exist anymore. Disney
agree.
Plus will become Hulu.
Yep.
I think within 5 years, I think that's a very realistic possibility.
Add on to that real quick, Kyle, because something's really important when it comes to the original subscribers to Disney Plus. Like myself and you jumped on Disney Plus when they did the 3-year plan to get people that were part of the announcement or had heard about the announcement at the time of the D23 convention attendees saying, you here get this 3-year subscription for I think it was $150, which is like $4 a month or something crazy like that. And if you didn't make that and you knew about that, you got in on that. And I think Matthew Clifton helped me guide me to that at the time, our friend Matt. Our subscriptions are about to be up in November from that 3 years, Kyle. And right now, Disney Plus is pushing the package of Disney Plus Hulu plus ESPN2. We have a decision to make, Kyle.
Oh, I have already made that decision, because here is the trick to that decision. And this is another reason why Disney Plus, watching things on Disney Plus, is going to be so important if you really want to give it support and give it love. So I have ESPN Plus, I have Hulu, I had Disney Plus, and I did, like you said, Kevin, the initial 3-year $150. Well, they're not offering that anymore. That was a one-time shot.
We're not going to be in, suck you in. We're not going to be grandfathered into that.
However, the Disney Plus, what they call the Disney Plus bundle, gives you Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus. Now, depending on what plan you choose with Hulu, and this is where it gets interesting, you have two choices. There's like one for like $13.99, $14.99. That gives you Hulu with ads. However, I changed my plan, even though my Disney Plus has not expired yet. They gave me a credit towards the Hulu bundle for the remainder of my Disney Plus subscription. I am getting Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, and Hulu without ads for $20 a month. Key thing, ESPN is raising ESPN Plus to $10 a month for an individual subscriber. However, that change is not affecting the price of the Hulu bundle, nor is the fact that Disney Plus is about to go up by $1 or $2 a month here soon. That price is not being reflected in the Hulu bundle. They are pushing the Disney Plus bundle, and the reason why they're doing that, they will never make ESPN absorbed into Disney Plus. You'll never see that. But Disney doesn't quite know what to do with Hulu. And Hulu is still kind of this great place where they can put more adult things on there. But now that we're seeing things like the Netflix Marvel shows, which had a more adult content to it, and when they brought those on, they put on parental controls. Mm-hmm. Now we have Logan, Deadpool 2, and Deadpool 1, which are all very hardcore R-rated films. Yep. And yes, they do tie into their Marvel relationship. 5 years from now, Hulu will just be part of Disney Plus, and Disney Plus will have a section for FX. Disney Plus will have a section for Fox, and
because the studios that Orville has been filming in the last couple of years is Fox Studios in LA. Who owns Fox? Disney.
So, yeah, it's coming. But when you're gonna see is the Disney Plus subscription will be like the $20 a month, but you're
Haley
getting all of
has
what you're doing.
questions. What's up, Haley?
No, I just have a thought /
Okay.
question.
Okay.
If that is the case, does that mean Rose, Dorothy, Sophia, and Blanche are Disney princesses?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And so is Sarah Connor.
I just need to throw this out to all of our friends out there who not only listen to our podcast but watch G4 TV. If you are familiar with Austin Creed, aka WWE superstar Xavier Woods, he would be bouncing all over the place about Haley saying the Golden Girls are Disney princesses, because this is a man who will go to Golden Girl conventions and goes to Golden Girl auctions because he is such a fan of the Golden Girls.
Nice. All right, guys. One last thing I wanted to mention, and we teased it in as the last thing that Michael Wynn Johnson says in his Den of Geek article, and perhaps a subtle thank you to the new mouse-eared overlords. These were the most Star Wars-inspired action sequences that Orville has ever shown. It was clearly an homage, or at least subconsciously inspired by Star Wars: A New Hope, while Commander Grayson and his small group of rebels, including Burke and Isaac, land on the Moclan base to take back the weapon. A massive battle takes place in the planet's atmosphere and the orbit. The sheer scale of these conflicts is absolutely awe-inspiring and creates one of the top memorable moments of the show's entire run. We also finally got to see an entire fleet of pterodons taking on the Moclan base, just like Luke took on the Death Star. And also, too, those were the same sets that was used in the other episode where the Moclan black site was, and they had to rescue Topa. They just kind of changed things just a little bit, but yes, it was the same set. Kyle, your thoughts on the homage to Star Wars in this episode?
This whole episode was a Star Wars homage. I've been saving this because I knew we were going to talk about this at the end of the episode. I did not want to step on anything. Everything about this episode, outside of the jump that was right out of Star Trek 2009, was Star Wars. I mean, they might as well have just from the shaking of the building as they blew up certain things around. They remind me of this Death Star shaking when, like, the first time they fired at the exhaust tube and it just hit the surface, but the whole Death Star shook. So everything like that reminded me of it. I was waiting for Darth Vader to come walking through. The fight sequence was so reminiscent of the Death Star fight sequence. We had our trench run, everything. Seth MacFarlane said, I got to get my Star Wars in love in this if I'm going to be closing this out. And he got it in, and he got it in beautifully.
I got to say that one shot when they're getting the heck out of there and it's exploding and Mercer goes aft view and you see the destruction. And then there was that kind of blue light arc that was probably the blast wave coming from it. That was really, really cool. Haley, what did you think of that? Did you see any Star Wars influence there?
Definitely. I was very much like, oh, look, it's a Moclan Death Star. It's fine.
Nice.
My things that I wanted to throw in, two different things. So when I'm going to take us back to Kalon. And so when they're on there and they are Halsey and Mercer and Grayson are turning to leave after talking with Primary 1 and 2 and 3, I'm just going to call them. Halsey takes a step forward and then turns around. Immediately took me back to when I was in marching band, because to turn around, you don't just turn around. You actually take a step forward and pivot on the ball of your foot to turn around. And I believe when they are...
Wait, hold on. Are you calling Victor Garber a band geek?
Potentially. I mean, that's where I went, because that's nice. How when you're in marching band, so I went to a summer camp to learn how to be student director, and we would have drills. And it sucked, because believe me, this was at Boise State, and Boise State, if listeners, if you're not knowledgeable about this, Boise State has the weirdest, not grass. It is AstroTurf on their field,
but it's blue
in their football stadium, and it is blue. It is blue. I will tell you a funny story, actually. When they first put it in, before they painted it and put the lines on it, birds would like geese and stuff would actually try to land on it. They thought it was water because it's blue.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. I feel like the only part of the things that Haley's talking about, there's one thing missing, Kevin. This one time at band camp.
I was thinking it, but I didn't say it. I didn't say it. I was thinking it, Kyle. You and I were there this one time at band camp. Yep.
We love you.
I will briefly. I hate that movie. I got so much flack from that movie from my friends because I went to camp,
American Pie,
and also I played the flute in high school, so I hate that movie.
I didn't know about the flute, but we do it because we love you,
Haley. Haley, is there any other observations you want to mention?
Yeah, but anyway, so when you do an about face, when they're making out the calls, you actually step forward and turn. I believe the military, when they're out marching and walking, they also do the same thing. So it's a military type of thing. Gotcha. So rather than just turning on your feet, because if you have something in your hands, you're carrying something, it's just going to swing around. The other thing, so that was cool. The other thing is the Mocklin Death Star is in the Draconis system, and that is a direct call from Spock's brain.
Ah, nice call out. Okay, very cool. Like
because that is the planet that they have to go to is in the Draconis system.
That's so funny. Wow.
Nice. When I hear Draconis, I expect a fire-breathing dragon.
To me, it sounds like a really bad perfume for men from the 80s.
Draconis by Calvin Klein.
Yes. Of course, I'm referring to Dracar Noir. You know who you are, smelly bastards. Okay. Kyle, did you have any final comments or thoughts regarding this episode of the Orville Domino?
Again, I think it was a great penultimate episode before, whether it's a series or season finale. I think it did exactly what it needed to do, and it did it. It gave us an episode of the Orville that we really hadn't, with, like I said, most action-packed episode of the Orville ever. And I think when you're thinking about the fact that we're already in season 3 of this show, and you can say that, that's pretty impressive. Usually that card is played pretty early on. So, yeah, it's a phenomenal show. Whether next week is the last episode or not, it's been an amazing ride up to this point, and I'm looking forward to it with hope that we're going to be talking about the Orville for a long time to come yet.
Hashtag renew the Orville. Get on it, guys. Hey, Kyle, remember how I introduced John Wick to everyone? Hopefully I can be the one that saves the Orville. Just saying. All right.
I can't give you that one. Yeah. I can you contributed, but I can't give you that one.
You've been listening to the Fandom Podcast Network. Hopefully you laughed at that. All right, guys, let's get into some subspace signals here. All right, guys. First of all, thank you so much for listening to Union Federation, episode 143, discussing the Orville New Horizons, Season 3, Episode 9, Domino. You can find the Fandom Podcast Network on the Subspace channels. First of all, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are dropping episodes up there, both video and with audio as well, and we'd love the love up there. Please subscribe. And our master feed for all of our audio podcasts can be found on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. Please also check out our Union Federation Podcast Facebook page. We're celebrating both Star Trek and the Orville there. Make sure you follow us and get in there. And also, please check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Union Federation Podcast. You can contact us directly at email at theunionfederation@gmail.com. My name is Kevin. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. Kyle, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW or on Instagram at AKyleFandom. Might I add, Kevin, real quick, this episode was named Domino, and there was no Keira Knightley guest appearance in this episode. I have a problem with that.
Yes, actually, I had the Jessie J song Domino going on in my head. I'm a big fan
that
of
that too.
Haley, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter. I am at Trekkie01D.
And I believe Amy has been spotted stateside. She has actually finally got out of her captivity of Scotland, which she had a great time. And she is back. We'll see if we get her back next week or not, but we will definitely get her thoughts on this Orville season for sure, sooner than later, hopefully. Amy can be found on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson. Also,
hey, Kevin,
yeah,
real quick. Amy's been gone so long on these adventures she's been doing. I think at this point she has to serve several weeks on the lower decks before we can let her back on the podcast.
I don't think she would have a problem with that. So yeah.
Yeah.
And Amy, of course, is part of the BQN network, and we have welcomed the BQN network, of course, to the Fandom Podcast Network, and they can be found on Twitter and Instagram at BQN Podcast, and also on Facebook, the BQN Collective Listeners Group. But let's look into the Orb of Prophecy, guys. We've got some stuff to look forward to. Let's check that out real quick. More Star Trek to come, of course, confirmed. We have Lower Decks, Star Trek Lower Decks premiering in this summer. Kyle, is it August?
August 25th, season 3
August
of Lower
25th.
Decks starts. Also, pretty big announcement about Lower Decks at San Diego Comic-Con, too.
Did you want to mention that briefly?
Yeah, well, I know Haley does not want to hear this, but they are doing a crossover in season 2 of Strange New Worlds, and I think it'll be season 4 of Lower Decks. There will be a crossover between those two shows. I'm curious.
Star Trek, Strange New World, and Lower Decks are going to do a crossover.
Yeah, my understanding is that Boimler and I can't think of the other character's names. Tani Newsom provides the voice for her, the main character, will be crossing over into Strange New Worlds, and some Strange New World people will be showing up animated on Lower Decks.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Haley doesn't seem happy about that. we'll leave it at that. We'll have her explain that later. Star Trek Prodigy Season 1, Part 2 will be premiering late 2022. But next week, season or series finale, ? Orville New Horizons Season 3, Episode 10 will premiere on August 4th, 2022. And for those of you on the West Coast, that will be at 9 o'clock on the Wednesday night. And then, of course, Thursday is the main premiere date there. We'll see what happens, guys. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to plan on watching that as soon as it drops. What about you, Kyle? You're going to wait till the next day?
Well, it drops here at midnight, so that's
no excuse. Show your fandom.
Unfortunately, there's also things called real life, but it will be watched that Thursday for sure, no matter what.
All right. Haley, what about you? You gonna wait a little bit? You gonna put yourself in a spoiler bubble and not pay attention?
Basically. Usually I wait till Friday just because things are a little too crazy.
Gotcha.
With work,
okay.
So.
All right, guys. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of talking about the Orville and here on Union Federation. We'll see you next week for the season finale. Goodbye, everyone. Our hailing frequencies are now closed.